Yeah, glitches can be serious business. That is not a particularly strong opening. I don't know how to open this one. Patreon Commission Review. I'm talking about the first season of Glitch Techs. This is a show on Netflix that they did with Nickelodeon. It is animated. The first season is 9 episodes long. And this was an odd viewing experience for me. Let's start with the premise. This is kind of aimed at a sort of tween age. It's still sort of connecting to, or at least accessible to a younger audience, but it is trying to be a little bit, a little bit more hip, a little bit more cool. Boy, did I just age myself by calling it hip. Wow. Hold on to that thought. I'll circle back onto it in a way a little bit later. But in any case, this primarily focuses on two characters, those of Five and Miko. Those are their gamer tags. And they, after the initial setup, because the premiere episode, which is about double length. So I guess effectively this is more like 10 episodes since the first episode is double length. But it sets up the premise and gets them in the position where they are working for, boy, it's going to sound really strange when I say it in universe. They're working for a video game company / video game retailer. So it's like if GameStop was also Nintendo. So they work for this company dealing with glitches. This is a world in which a video game glitch actually results in something manifesting in the real world. Usually an enemy of some kind for them to then deal with. And this is kind of, it's an attempt to be a early teenage or tween-age targeted video game Men in Black, kind of, because like erasing the memories of whoever saw them do whatever they did is a recurrent thing in this. So that's sort of where the Men in Black thing comes in. But Five and Miko are recruited into this. They are the newbies, and we see them go on their adventures. There's a few other recurring cast members. We see a bit of Miko's family. We actually don't see Five's family after the first episode, now that I think of it, which is odd and a little disappointing. I liked Five's family a lot better. Not just because like they were way more supportive of Five than Miko's family is of her, but also just because I thought that dynamic was more interesting. Anything that minimized the whole like, oh, you don't understand me, mom and dad, and like gave me a different dynamic, I would have found more interesting. But we get way more time with Miko's family. Oh well. So we've got some family members. They have coworkers. There's Mitch, who is sort of the high-flying douchebag. He's got a very strong record as a glitch tech, but he's a dick. And then there is Paul? I forget the manager's name now. I feel like it started with a P. Who's just he's a neckbeard. He's an older neckbeard dude. That's kind of his deal. Like, he has a full beard, but you get what I mean when I say like a neckbeard, right? Does that phrase mean anything to anybody not my age? God. Why am I talking about something aimed at a demographic this much younger? Well, that's sort of where it gets weird, not just because I'm not the target demographic of this. Here's what I'm going to say. The overall thing is pretty much what you'd expect, and not a lot more than that. It has these two characters build a relationship with each other, go out and have their little mini adventures, very frequently involving a very heavily telegraphed life lesson for the day. It kind of reminds me of 80s cartoons that I used to watch in that way, because there will be a point at which, and this isn't every episode, but it's often enough that it was a pattern where one or both of the characters will do something that is obviously a mistake or a foolish thing for them to do, and that will result in whatever the life lesson is. Like the first example that's coming off the top of my head is Five is trying to take on a leadership role, and he thinks leadership means everybody listens to you, and so he's not listening to his team. And there's a very obvious bit where they're dealing with these glitches, and a member of his team is like trying to get his attention, being like, actually, and Five keeps talking over him. So like, okay, that's going to be the lesson. That's going to be our life lesson that we take away today. It's about what leadership actually is, and giving everybody a voice, and not just talking over people. It's that kind of thing. If there's something that gives it a little bit extra zest, I'd say it's the action scenes. They're actually quite well done, interestingly choreographed. The enemies are fun in their design, and just in general, it's very high energy in a way that mostly works. I think just kind of holistically, I think it's a little bit of a misstep for a show like this to try and capture the gaming youth of the time that it was released, when it was very clearly written by people who were, I'm sure, at some point gamers, but who aren't currently, or at least not for the kinds of games that the actual target demographic would be playing. Case in point, there's a rather extended Castlevania parody in this. Now, that in and of itself doesn't have to be a problem. Castlevania is a franchise that's been around for a while, except that it is very specifically a Castlevania Symphony of the Night parody. It's very specific in a number of ways that it is that specific game. That game's from the PlayStation 1. And there's another one where it's like a beat 'em up game that is very clearly a Thundercats pastiche, and not like the reboot Thundercats, like 80s Thundercats. And I don't know I don't know how to feel about this. It has a certain amount of fellow kids energy as well. Like, okay, let me put it this way. There was a character, actually a couple characters do this, referred to social media as Sochmead. Now, I'm not going to say definitively whether or not younger generations than me have ever used that phrase sincerely. I don't know. What I do know is I have only ever heard the phrase Sochmead used in comedy bits to represent somebody in their 30s or older trying to seem cool. And here I am watching a show in which the teenage characters are using Sochmead unironically. So, at best, if that was actually, I'm pretty sure it's not now, if that was actually a phrase used by the youth, it was kind of dead quickly and had already become a parody of itself almost immediately, so far as I can tell. And that's assuming it was ever actually used by young people. I'm not convinced it was. So you have weird little moments like that. And the thing is, though, in terms of the references, I don't know how much of a problem that actually is. Like, it strikes me as odd watching as an adult, seeing so many things, reference, like, that's Mega Man, that's Pokemon, that's Pac-Man, and being like, that's not of the time or the era of the people who you actually expect to be watching this. But the thing is, I don't want to make too much of a deal out of that, because, like, part of me is tempted to go, you clearly don't know the audience you're trying to speak to. Except that that's kind of always been true with referential cartoons. Like, I think back to stuff in the 90s that I was watching, Animaniacs, Freakazoid, Tiny Toon Adventures. They were constantly making references to and pulling lines from and parodying things that I had no idea what they were. Animaniacs had a recurrent parody of Goodfellas, the R-rated mob movie from the 80s. And I found out recently, in a weird way, that a shocking number of people my age did actually know what Goodfellas and The Godfather were at that age, but I didn't But it didn't bother me watching that stuff at the time. So I don't want to project that it's actually a fault. But at the same time, it does feel like it's trying to be, I will just be chronically uncool and own it. It's trying to be hip. It feels like it is. And if that's what it's trying to do, I don't think it quite gets there. If it's trying to just wrap up its audience with the high energy and the action, and they're just throwing the stuff in because the creators think it's fun, I suppose that's successful enough. In the first episode, there was a hint of some kind of notion of an overarching story that has not come into play by the end of the first season. I need to double check with the commissioner if they want me to do the second season or not. I don't have a clear answer on that, so I don't know. If there is more that's going to happen, I assume it's going to be in the second season, because first season, it's really just the isolated adventures one after another, which again is fine. A little bit odd that it was made for Netflix, that it has so little in terms of like recurring or building story, because again, Netflix has a binge model. The nature of the show really feels like it would have been far more suited to a weekly release on something like Nickelodeon. Again, Nickelodeon produced it, but they produced it for Netflix, which again just strikes me as odd. Overall, odd is kind of the word for this. Not bad, but just I find my head tilting slightly at some of the choices made. I mean, I had enough fun with it, for something that is very clearly not aimed at me as a viewer. I had some fun with it, and like I said, the action is actually worth highlighting and worth noting. Like, that's good. They do quite well with the action scenes. So I don't want to sound like this isn't worth giving a shot if these kinds of shows are your jam, but there, at least in the first season, there's nothing transcendent. There's nothing that raises it to the level of a She-Ra or an Owl House or an Amphibia, or things like that. It's just the monster of the week, basically, which is a totally fine thing. It's just not more than that. Glitch Techs, Season 1. Anybody out there see this show? It's not something I heard about outside of being commissioned for it, but whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills. Enables me to do this as my living, even if you can't help me out that way. Like, share, subscribe. Those all help. Don't worry too much about it, though. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you just come on back next time you need a break. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Jared Boyce, Subin Lutfulla, Auntie Kate 808, Mira G, Angry Casperol, Dave Hall, Oliver B, Mystic Shadow, Sean Miller, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Melissa Pedersen, Becky Sparks, Ulrich, Twylord, Tracy Scrabbit, Palba Rabajoggle, Sir Didymus is my favorite, and thanking some random folks from the lower tiers of my Patreon: Puck, Lady Sammy, and Eva Bright. Don't worry, the rats are fine. Just thought we'd kick the year off with Archie. What you think, bud? He's skeptical.